Let me know when we're live.
Yes, we're live.
Like we are live. Okay, sweet. Thank you, Jane. Welcome, everyone. We'll be getting started here in a few moments. This is Career Lab Wednesday. We're here every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central. And we look at the career through the lens of emotional intelligence. So we've been sharing a lot about that. Welcome, Drew.
What's going
Good
on,
to see
GG?
you.
How are you?
Hey, I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Good. Are you rebranding to George?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
Yes, George Miller. It's a good, strong Mennonite American name online.
I love it. Sounds like you're about to go plow a field.
That's right. I love plowing fields. So we are I'm talking about career from the emotional intelligence standpoint. That's kind of, as we've been doing this for the past 14 months, we found that that's really what a lot of people kind of come to us for in how to negotiate in interviews, how to work with coworkers that they've been struggling with, and that the emotional intelligence side of it is really key. So Drew, we'll get going as we get people joining in here, and want to let you know that it will be you and I today. Dr. Medlock is on a deadline for something with WGU, so will not be joining us today. And I think that how are you doing with your WGU?
I had everything submitted on Sunday.
Woo!
I do not do well with high pressure day of deadline type of work. So yeah, that stuff's been knocked out, which feels really good. So I'm on a bit of WGU holiday right now, and then I'm having to be on proper holiday next week. I'll be down in South Carolina for the week, learning to drive a motorcycle, which I'm super excited about.
Yes.
Flying in my dad's plane for the first time. We're going to be going kayaking. So lots of modes of transportation to be enjoyed next week.
Fantastic. Oh, that's great to hear, Drew. And congratulations on turning in your reports early. That's got to feel good. So, well, we are here with Career Lab Wednesday every noon to 1 p.m. Central Time. And I want to give a shout out to our guest this week, Drew Allison. Thank you so much for joining in again. We enjoyed you last week. So Drew is the VP of Personal Lines Insurance, and has worked a lot with hiring and that process. And he was bringing in some great insights last week. So wanted to bring him back. He's been working in our MBA program with where we really focus on social and emotional intelligence and the importance of emotions in the job place, whether you're interviewing or if you're at your company where you're developing your leadership skills, how important emotional intelligence is. We actually find that it is the difference. It makes the difference between you being just staying put where you are or developing. It is the most important factor to your career success. This research started emerging in the late 90s with Daniel Goleman, and there's been a lot more of it coming out since then. Oftentimes you'll see at the Harvard Business Review on LinkedIn, they're posting articles about the importance of emotional intelligence. So we're finding that people have questions about that, and we're able to support those. I want to open this up to everybody. Tyrone, good to see you. I thought it was your wife, but now I see that you're on her device. Welcome. Good to have you here.
Yeah, I guess I'm the teacher's wife,
Yeah.
Like the preacher's wife, like Denzel Washington.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
I'm
the teacher's wife.
Good to see you. It's been a while.
Oh, yes, indeed. And
so I just want to say for everybody who's joining in, because we're live on a few platforms, there's a few ways for you to engage with us today. Our primary job, by the way, is to support you in whatever it is that you're working on in your career. So it doesn't have to do with emotional intelligence. If that's not on your agenda, that's great. There's a few ways that you can engage with us. If you're able to, like Tyrone, we love it when you jump in on Zoom and we can work directly with you that way. That's the easiest. I think we get the most value. But if you're unable to, you can always type your questions into the comment section. You can do that in YouTube. If you're on YouTube and you want to make sure that we can see you there, you can type a 1 into the chat just to make sure that we're getting you there. And if you're on LinkedIn, you can type your questions into the comment section. So all that being said, I would love to open up the floor to any questions that people have. So, Tyrone, what have you got going on?
Well, since last time we spoke, I've really, I just got off of an interview, a phone interview with a temporary agency just to see where their minds are, where they're going. And it's a support technician position. And I mean, it went rather, it was good. She basically asked me, can you describe to me the role that you did while you were a help desk? When I worked for a drywall company for a 6-month contract. So she asked me like different parallel questions that parallel to one another, as far as how did you do with Active Directory? Can you tell me about Active Directory? Can you tell me about imaging a computer? Which I did, because that's in the process of imaging laptops when they come in for not only for coworkers in different departments like HR, accounts receivable, just many different departments, as well as people that were in seniority positions like warehouse managers, presidents, vice presidents.
So you were able to communicate that you've worked with many different people, many different levels in helping them with their devices.
Yes, and I told her about the software that we use. It was called Citrix.
And so what's the next steps? Are you're waiting for a response?
Oh, she said she would contact her senior HR representative, and I have her information as well. So we've already set up another interview for next week.
Congrats.
Yeah, and it's amazing because I had class last night and we went over switch and networking, switching routers and networking. It's kind of complex, but my way of thinking and learning new things is to go over and over and over. That's just me. And I found a notebook this morning I've been looking for weeks. Yeah, and it's amazing because I wished I would have had this notebook right beforehand, but I believe I did very well in the interview despite not having this notebook, just going over and over and over and over.
That is so, I mean, preparation is key, for interviewing, for speaking, for preparing for a meeting. So it sounds like you've been doing that well and that it's paying off.
Yes, and also with the podcast I was telling you guys about, we want to do a Zoom meeting tonight. We still may. We want to just go over the communication part of it, because that's what it's going to be called. Communicating is confidence, because you have to be active in communicating. When you're not communicating, you're not really active. So, and that's why I wanted to really, with the special guest we're going to have, I called him in advance and he said hey, he's got a meeting at 7:30, and we're gonna try to have
Okay.
this at 8. So it wouldn't work. So and sometimes you just have to make the first move, the first call. And that's what I'm constantly learning. I'm still learning, everyone. And we had a good conversation. He said, yeah, we could do it next week. I said, hey, we got 10 people that want to be special guests, and I want to work on this calendar.
Okay,
So
fantastic. Well, Tyrone, so I just want to let everybody know what you've been up to overall. So Tyrone is interviewing, also creating a podcast, and he is a networker extraordinaire. He's all over the place making things happen. And so, Tyrone, it's great to hear from you, to hear your process and your updates. And I'm wondering, is there anything that we can support you with today? Any questions, any challenges, blocks that you're up against?
that's that's a very good question. And everyone's schedule, and that's the thing we're dealing with. We're dealing with, I mean, because we all have schedules that are overwhelming. I talked to a lady.
Are you using anything like Calendly?
I've never heard of that. Could
You might want to check it out. There does become a thing where scheduling can just bog things down. And if
Right.
you can do, or a doodle poll, I think doodles are free anyways, for a while. So check those out.
So is Calendly. There's a free
Okay.
version of Calendly too.
Oh,
Yeah, and to George's point, I think I think scheduling is like everyone's least favorite part of what we do. You know, it's like trying to get people in the same
Yeah.
room together is so tough. And so
It is.
using the technology, and what's nice about Candidly or Doodle is it just, there's a lot of ways for you to provide options to other people and to allow them to put themselves on your calendar, which is really helpful.
Right.
One thing that I've found that a lot of people are afraid to do is be assertive when it comes to scheduling and say, hi, George, I would like to meet with you at 3:00 on Thursday. If that doesn't work, I'm available at this time. If that doesn't work, let me know when you're available and we'll make it work.
Right.
And I don't ask George when he's available. I lead by giving him 2 options, and then, you know, and then we can kind of go from there. But since I've been doing that, I started doing that a couple of years ago, where I became very assertive in my scheduling requests and offered specific times, specific days. The speed in which I'm able to schedule meetings and appointments has really sped up. And the reason for it is because people are kind of afraid to assert themselves on other people and say like, hey, I want to meet with you at this specific time, because we're all sort of afraid to interject ourselves in people's calendars. But
Right.
it's but if you take that step, you sort of take the fear out of it from the other person. You put the decision in their court, but in a really educated way. And I coach my sales people on it all the time, because they're always trying to get people on the phone to close a deal, but they're sort of tiptoeing around schedules. And it's like, you can't tiptoe. You just got to get in there and make a request and then take it from there. But it's great that's where you're at, because if you're focusing on scheduling, that means you got meetings to be had, which is the right place to be.
Right. And thank you, Drew, for that. It's an honor to meet anyone that's associated with George, because
Nice to meet you
I
too.
realized the old me, I would have just went right in with the Zoom meeting tonight and not really have a true plan or true agenda.
Yeah, okay. And I want to break down what Drew is saying in social and emotional intelligence language.
Thank you.
This
Thank you.
is so cool. And I love what you're saying, Drew, because when I'm going into a meeting, there's all this unknown, and I might be feeling fear, and I might be feeling angry too, because I want a freaking result. I want to get something set up, but I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I don't, so that might be the kind of historical pattern. What I hear you saying is that I'm actually using the fear to direct as a way to direct myself, and using a little bit of anger. I'm not yelling at the person, but we like to break that term anger down into finer and finer increments, down to where I'm using aggression in rapport with somebody and saying, here's the two availabilities I have. And that is making it clear for them. It's relieving the anxiety. I'm taking responsibility, my ability to respond to this scenario, and I'm giving direction that way. And then if they're unable to, then it goes into more of a conversation. But already, since I've taken responsibility for my fear and my anger in that scenario, it's going to likely lead to a faster result. And so I think that's fantastic, Drew. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
And I'll take it one step further. If you're in a company already and your company is using Outlook, I'm sure there's other equivalents for other services, but
Yes.
in Outlook, a lot of people don't know that there's the scheduling assistant when you go to schedule a meeting. And whether or not you have visibility on somebody's camera, or I'm sorry, on someone's calendar, if you invite them to a meeting and then select scheduling assistant, it will show everyone's availability in real time, whether or not they're available. So I've even gone above that. And when I'm trying to meet so I work for a company with 8,500 employees across the country. As such, I'm constantly meeting new people, new allies, new folks that I can work with and partner with across the company. So when I meet somebody like in a meeting, like, whether it's like a DEI meeting or a company town hall, I will put myself on their calendar using the scheduling assistant, knowing that they're free. And I'll say, hey, I would love just a 15-minute, get to know you or want to run something by you. If this time doesn't work, please let me know. No worries. But I'm kind of making it that much easier, breaking down the barriers for them to say no by using the tools that I have. So that's another kind of hard tool that I rely on regularly in my networking.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
And yeah, you're doing them a favor, because scheduling, like you said, is like everybody's least favorite thing to do. So if you're taking the initiative there, and for some reason, if they're not able to, they'll be like, oh, so sorry, I couldn't make it. But the chances of it actually happening have like increased like 90% because you took the lead on it.
Right. And I've actually talked to a lady. She's actually running for city council in the 4th district, and she said she would love to be on like the podcast. And what's crazy, the meeting place we're going to meet at, she actually said she lives right down the street, which I didn't know. But yeah, that and she told me, she said in the email last week, because she described to me everything she's been doing, and I just kind of put it out there to, hey, this won't last too long. I don't want to take up too much of your time. And she really felt what I was saying, and she said, you know what you said was right. I'm at this time right now, I'm very overwhelmed with everything that's going on, and it's just, it goes back to just like meeting them halfway, like you guys are describing. And I believe emotional intelligence plays a huge part in every conversation we have. I really do.
Well, fantastic. Tyrone, thank you. Thank you. And I think your edge on this might be to take Drew's coaching and to be a little more assertive around scheduling, and even just sending them a calendar invite and saying, hey, I sent you a couple, please pick the one. If you don't want to get into Calendly or any of those other tools, but just take in the lead on it. And people can always say, no, that doesn't work. Right. But I love what you're doing, so I want you to move with it and keep going. So nice work.
Thank you, guys.
You bet. Well, so I want to do a quick room reset. This is Career Lab Wednesday. We're here every Wednesday from noon to 1 p.m. Central. This week we are talking about emotional intelligence. And how important that is in your career. It's really the number one thing that's going to have you be more successful and satisfied overall. There's all kinds of research going into this about our ability to communicate with other people and how that helps us rise in leadership positions, but also have a greater sense of satisfaction. One of the statistics that really struck me was around when interviewing people towards the end of their life and saying, what is the thing that you most regret or wish you had done more of, or something like that? And
Yeah.
people often say, it's very, very high up there, and is I wish I had really let people know how I felt. I really wish that I had shared more about what was important to me. I wish people really knew who I was. And so our emotions and communicating that way is one of the key things to that. So it's not just, yes, it helps in career, and it also helps in our satisfaction overall. So welcome, Matt. Welcome, Eric. Good to have you on again. Gabriella, good to see you. Welcome. So that's our topic overall, but we open the floor. We invite anybody to jump in. We love it when you can come in on Zoom. That's going to be the best way to engage. But if you can't, you can always type your questions into the comment section, or on YouTube, you can type your questions in there as well, and Jane will get those over to us. We'll do our best to get to your questions there. But a reminder that we are here to serve you with whatever career-related questions you have. I'd love to hear from you, Eric or Gabriella or Matt, and see how we can support you today. What's on your heart? Hey, Gabriella.
So, since the topic today is emotional intelligence, I don't know, does anyone else have the challenge of wherever they're working I kind of feel like being stuck in the middle? You know, you have the boss above you, and then you have maybe the people who report to you or who work for you. And you try your best, I think, to communicate both downward and upward, and of course across to your colleagues. But what do you do when, you know, really from the top, there is kind of a lot of negativity that kind of, you know, puts the brakes on everything?
Well, can you tell us more about negativity?
I interpret that as like not being very supportive, or not being willing to entertain new ideas, or generally speaking, not being kind of open to different thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Well,
George, I'd love to chime in on that.
Yeah, go for it.
So it's a great point you bring up, Gabriella, because depending on the size of a company, especially much larger companies, the folks that are operating at the top don't have a lot of connection and don't really know what the day-to-day of most of the workers looks like. And so they have a hard time anticipating their needs. And so they don't understand why things are being requested of them, or why they should be putting resources or money towards emotional intelligence training or team outings or, you know, in-service events, because it's been so long since they've been in those people's shoes, or they've never been in those people's shoes. So they have a hard time kind of comprehending. And very often in my experience, there are almost 2 or 3 companies within the company. The folks that are above me are operating their own business and satisfying their bosses and their own needs. And then the folks below me are really running the day-to-day, and they're the ones that are making the whole thing tick and work. And it's because of that when social emotional intelligence trainings get introduced to companies, they often start with the middle managers. They start with the folks exactly like you're describing, right in between the two, which is where I sit and where I've sat for most of my career. And the reason for that is because even though it's one of the hardest places to be, you have the ability to influence both parts of the company. And so by by focusing on those individuals, you get the most impact for the content. Now, to get back to kind of your original question, I've found that there are so many things that are within my control that I can do to benefit the lives of the people that work below me and on my team, that I don't even need to involve the people above me in, because it usually doesn't cost a lot of money. And as long as we're still hitting our metrics, hitting our numbers and doing our thing, I've learned to take some agency and just and make decisions that impact the lives of the people on my team within the confines of what we're doing. And I pick and choose when I need to get approval or when I need to bring in the folks that are above me. But so often I'll introduce something. A really good example is the introduction of Microsoft Teams. So when I started with my company, we were not using Microsoft Teams, even though we had it readily available. So instead of asking my bosses if I could set it up and whatnot, I just went ahead and set it up. And then I showed them the value that it brought. And I was like, look at all this communication that we're having as a result of this. Look at, morale and company culture. Things are starting to come back, even though we're remote. And I sort of, by understanding which things I needed to ask my superiors about and which ones I could just do, it freed me up to have a lot more fun at work and to be able to implement a lot of this stuff, through the technology or through other things. So just kind of continuing the conversation a little bit. Does that sort of resonate or kind of spur any other ideas?
Interesting. Okay.
What's interesting about it?
Kind of this, I don't want to say do first, ask for permission later, but
well, I think that's a good bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhat different approach. Okay.
And is that a scenario that you're in currently or you're expecting to be in soon, Gabriella?
I feel like I've been in, but I don't think I've been able to manage it quite as maybe, I don't want to say aggressively or
assertively, probably.
Probably, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for.
Gabriella, this is like, I'm so afraid of the territory I'm stepping into at this moment, but I'm going to, just because of the gender stuff and I don't know, but overall, I mean, I think there's been a fair amount of studies that when men and women are applying for a job, that men will tend to be more confident, will like come off as if they know what they're doing. And that women will tend to question themselves more and come across as more insecure. Now, the flip side to this study shows that very often the women actually have a better understanding of what's needed. And are more in the question of things and trying to look at things from different angles. But in our sort of masculine dominated society, and sort of the left brain way of our culture, we overlook that. And so being in the question of things is often not valued. And so, what I've often worked with women on around this is taking the risk of being more assertive, just to see what happens with that. But also at the same time, not wanting to lose the gifts of all the questioning, because that's an important thing as well. So it's I don't know. I'm kind of talking, and I wanted to check in with you and see how you're hearing this.
No, I mean, I think as soon as you said, I don't know if I should step into this, I knew exactly where you were going to go.
Okay. See, and women's intuition tends to be pretty good too.
Yeah.
And just in fact, that's what I was thinking, just hearing what you all have to say. So I think that's part of it too. Yeah.
Right on. Right on. Oh, thank you. Yes, get that coffee. Thanks, Tyrone. So that and there's many ways then that I tend to be less assertive, or historically I was less assertive because for whatever reasons. And in one of the ways that I've learned to use my fear and anxiety around things is to ask what people's concerns are. So that's kind of another thing. Instead of me kind of isolating on it, like if I were to be talking to management, I might say something like, oh, thanks, Eric. I might say something like, what are your concerns? What are your, as I'm navigating, managing a team, and then also communicating to authority, leadership, whatever, I will pay attention to the anxiety that I'm feeling in the moment and ask people what their concerns are. And they'll usually tell me, well, the team, I don't think that they're not getting enough done fast enough. And then that kind of invites me to say, okay, great. I just got permission to do whatever I need to do to make sure that things are getting done faster. And so like what Drew was sharing, he's like, we're going to start using this tool that's really helpful. And so then it's kind of like a way that I buy permission for myself, but it helps me to get the top 3 things that my boss is concerned about, and to take the risks to realize those and understand that if my boss isn't going to be forgiving if I screw up on some things, then maybe that's not an environment I want to work in. But honestly, I have very few times that my bosses have not been incredibly forgiving of my mistakes. I tend to think that everybody has ill will towards me, and when it comes right down to it, I mean, there's been things I've done at a former company that were frankly just wrong. Yeah, Tyrone. And at the end of the day, when I was honest about it with my boss and we worked it out, I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, like, I thought I would get fired and I wasn't. So I tend to think that there's going to be more goodwill. And I'd rather err on the side of making mistakes, trying to get something done, as opposed to not doing anything.
Okay. And one thing I'll add to that is that when I find myself not acting, it's usually out of a fear of the unknown of what'll happen. And one of the ways that I get over that, or I manage that, is the meeting before the meeting. So if I'm going in to meet and ask permission from a group of people, I pick the person who I know is my closest ally, and I say, hey, this is my idea. I want to bring it to the group. What do you think? What red flags do you see? And I get their opinion on it. And I ask them directly, hey, what do you think the other people in the group are, how are they going to respond? What are their red flags going to be? And sometimes I get some insights that are spot on, but most of the time it just gives me a chance to talk through kind of my argument or my pitch with somebody that I trust that can give me good feedback. And if I'm going to talk to one person specifically, I try to find somebody who either knows that person as well, that's across the ladder on my level, or somebody who works with somebody of a similar personality style. So a great example is there's a woman in my company that has a very similar role to me on the East Coast, and we're kind of on different parts of the org chart, and we work with different people, but our bosses have very similar personalities. So when we have a question of like, okay, how should I approach this? We'll ping it off of one another first and have a meeting before the meeting to kind of help us get over the fear of the unknown before we walk into it. So that's something that I've been doing kind of from an EQ standpoint to help myself out in those conversations.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that you're underlining the importance of coaching and jumping into group coaching, things like this, because my way of thinking is very limited. I can only see so much. And so just by me getting other people's feedback on things, testing things out, like Tyrone, you're going and you're having the pre-meeting as well, like Drew. And it's like, it then is getting my brain in that space. It's a way to tend to myself instead of staying alone on it and probably not performing as well. So again, using the anxiety about a real thing that's coming up, and then using that anxiety to prepare effectively for it, instead of, putting my head in the sand on it. And
Yeah, but believe it or not, I mean, you guys are hitting it dead on. Like what you guys said, having a meeting before having an actual meeting. I work in an airport. I do overnight security, and it's amazing because I get to visualize, and that's what I want to visualize to those that are in the meeting that's going to be coming up. And that's one of the ways I want to help them into getting to have preparation of learning one another's cues.
yeah,
I guess, and check this out. And that's the thing, because it's like I work in the airport, and it took like 5-6 months to learn the runways and the taxiways, and communicating with the tower, and the tower communicates with the pilots, and the pilot and communicates with the tower, and so the tower. But all in all, it's like a phraseology that I sent to everyone in regards to our communication. Like I'm Airport 12, downtown ground, Airport 12. Would like to proceed south on taxiway Golf to Alpha. And then tower, they'll say, okay, Airport 12, you can proceed, because we have what you call, oh my goodness, we have lanes. Where certain lanes where you're not supposed to cross, because if you cross it, then you cross those lanes. My mind's spinning right now, but
Tyrone, I want to jump in here, because this practicing thing, and I wonder if you can even take it a step further with the emotions. Now we're going to be doing this next week. It's going to be a little tip of the iceberg on it, of fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy.
Right.
And one of the amazing things about this is because we're so programmed. And when I say fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy, what's your first thought about those 5 feelings?
They're real.
Okay.
They're all real. I mean,
do you have any judgments about them?
No, not really, because we all experience each and every one of those emotions.
My judgment is that the first 4 are bad.
Right.
And that I should be doing something to get rid of them. But if I can change the game to being more present with the fear, hurt, anger, and sadness in my body as that's happening.
Oh, okay.
It's like when I'm playing basketball, like doing the drills with the team beforehand. It's like you practicing at the airport your communications around the key moments when we're practicing, like when rehearsing a song with my band.
Right.
We don't necessarily play the whole song. We just take the hardest parts, the problem parts of the song, and we just practice those. We practice the transitions so that when we're playing live, we're going to nail it. It's going to be fine. And so it's like that with like the challenging emotions, the things I'm uncomfortable with, to be practicing feeling the fear, hurt, anger, sadness. As I do that, then it actually makes my whole day go smoother, because I'm prepared. It's like you with your team at the airport, where you're looking at the problem points and you're paying attention to those, preparing for that. So I invite you to pay particular attention to your core feelings. And if you can join us next Thursday, please do, because we'll go further into it.
Yes, I do have a cybersecurity class on Saturday. They're going to start doing class on 6 p.m. in the evening instead of early in the morning. So, and I know I got a call from, I believe her name is Kathleen.
Oh, Caitlin.
Yeah, Caitlin, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Morning. So, yeah, so I'm going to get back with her and let her know what days are good for me to join in.
Oh, fantastic. Caitlin's awesome.
Yeah. And what I wanted to say, those lines are what's called a non-movement area. But it's real, it's simple, but like with my personality, I have to go over and over and over again. But just like you're driving in your neighborhood or in an intersection, you have to pay attention.
Yeah, Tyrone, I don't think it's just your personality. I think it's a good idea.
Thank you.
I think it's a good idea for everybody.
It took me a while to come up with it, but I'm like, wait a minute. The stuff that I learned at the airport, I could apply it to my Zoom meeting and get everybody focused on what parts, because everybody has to have a part to play in. So, but yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Tyrone.
Downtown Ground Airport 12 would like to proceed crossing Lima over hold short of Kilo, hold short, but that's and it's amazing because I mean it all comes back, but that's
cool.
That's
cool. So we've got about 20 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we get anybody else in that's wanting to get some support today. Matt, welcome. Good to have you here as well. And to do a quick room reset, this is Career Lab Wednesday. Every Wednesday from noon to 1, we're here. We invite you to share your questions, concerns that you have, whether you're just starting off in your career, or if you've been somewhere for a long time and you're wanting to communicate better with your team, or you're wondering why you're not advancing when other people are. Any question, there's no question too big, no question too small. We often have people joining back in over the weeks as they're working through things. So invite you to share. You can always type your questions into the comment section on YouTube or on LinkedIn, and Jane will get those over to us. We'll do our best to get to those questions. Or if you can, click on the link and jump into the Zoom, and we can work with you directly here. So welcome again, everybody. Matt, good to have you on. How can we serve you today?
Hi. When we're talking about emotional intelligence, I think, when we're just describing emotions at work and what effect the pandemic has had on our state of fear and all of that. But where I'm kind of getting a little bit frustrated is I've been in the pharmaceutical research industry for about 23 years now. And before the pandemic, it was very much like bring people in for interviews, bring people in for collaborative meetings and trainings. And I'm the kind of learner who learns through talking things out, meeting with people and talking things out. And now that we've moved to this like more remote kind of environment, that it really hasn't changed, because I think a lot of companies have realized that they save a lot of money utilizing post-pandemic excuses for reasons to not meet up. And it ends up where like onboarding, training, all of these things that are being done remotely increase my level of anxiety and fear, just because I'm not meeting with somebody face to face. And then
So Matt, wait, help me understand. So you're interviewing people for your company?
No. I'm saying like on a training, onboarding, or
Okay, so as you're onboarding somebody to your company.
yeah.
Okay, so you used to meet in person, they would show up on site, you would get to interact with them face to face, body to body.
Right.
And now it's happening over Zoom or Teams or whatever.
And even it's been taken to another level where training and onboarding is self-reading. Just read the document, sign the training log, move on to the next, training. And that's not, it doesn't really resonate the training as well. You don't get a feel for the company culture anymore. What do you guys recommend to either influence upper management to move towards more body to body meetings, and then also what tools do you think I could use to, other than like Teams is one thing, and it's and Zoom is another one, but there's a lot of different systems out there that are being utilized for this.
Matt, so I've got some thoughts about it. I definitely want to share, but I want to check in with Drew on this. Drew, what are your thoughts?
So it's super interesting, right? Because employers and companies that were forced to be fairly local before the pandemic now have opportunities to hire and recruit and now have workforces throughout the country. And it's creating that exact problem that Matt's talking about, where traditional culture fueling activities are now different, and they change. And as much as we can connect through Zoom and have and build a relationship that way, it's not going to it's not going to supplement fully what you can get when you're with somebody face to face. And there are times when I felt exactly how Matt's feeling, and there's a couple. So there's things that I can control, and there's things that that's out of my control that my company has influence on. Making sure I'm providing honest, in the moment feedback to the people that have the ability to change what systems and structures we're doing is super key. And often when we're prompted for feedback, we aren't always super honest, or we think, oh, well, we'll tell them later, or we'll tell somebody else. And then I often forget about it. So when I'm really not happy with the way that a training or a continuing education class is happening, I try to take notes in real time in like an open email. And then I try to get those in the hands of somebody who can make a change as quickly as possible. So making sure that I speak up. The other thing that I've found helpful is finding allies within the company that have a similar need to meet with people face to face and body to body. And I really like this distinction, because we're face to face, some of us right now, technically, but it's not that kinetic energy of being in the same room with somebody. So I'm going to start kind of using this face to face versus body to body. I think there's an interesting distinction there. But I will find allies within my company that have similar priorities as I do. And as I move through different education or training or meetings, we will do our own things in person so that way we get that connection and we can learn together if the company isn't going to support it themselves. And I've had teammates who have flown to visit other people in their company or in our company to work with them for a week and just take that initiative and say, hey, I want to go sit with somebody else. I want to sit with a different in a different office or with different people. And a really good example of that, years ago, I managed a retail store in Chicago, and we were closing for renovations for a couple of days. And my boss was like, hey, you can take a couple of days off. And I was like, hey, you know what? Do you mind actually if I fly out to New York and work with the New York stores for a couple of days and get that experience of being face to face, body to body with different employees, different customers, that kind of thing. So often I feel like the people that have the ability to make the decision just aren't thinking creatively enough about what they can do. And so when I speak up and say, hey, do you mind if we try this? Often they're like, sure, like as long as it doesn't disrupt what I'm doing, they have little reason to say no. And if, I'm in the insurance industry now, and, I don't know if pharmaceuticals is similar, but, there's money to be spent on employee development. So like I've never had somebody say no to me taking a trip to go work with somebody for a face-to-face meeting or what have you. But it often comes from me as opposed to hoping somebody else will kind of make that shift. I don't know, Matt, does that kind of resonate with you? Sort of.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something I'm going to utilize. Is that it's just, I feel like the other aspect is that it's so much easier to point fingers and put people under the bus when you haven't met with them face to face, and that causes, I think that just, after the pandemic, the whole pharmaceutical industry decided to do a lot of more remote kind of work. And not only is it training and onboarding that's remote now, or self-learning, which is just reading and signing a document. It's the inability to truly understand if somebody has an issue with something you've done or not. And being able to like work through that, and being remote for me has always been, I'm a talking learner. I am like usually somebody who likes, to be properly trained by another individual rather than just reading document after document. They have us read like 30 SOPs and then sign off on that, and it's like, okay, yeah, do you really understand all of them? And we see that people don't. We see that our people that report to us, they just don't have a handle on it because they just needed to sign a document and move forward.
Yeah.
And I think that
Matt, so I want to jump in here with some ideas too about this, because I'm a God bless her, somebody who was my sales coach and was my sales manager before. She learned at some point that my learning style was verbal, and so she knew
Nice.
that if we all got emails, that I might read the email, but it wasn't going to land. And so she always made sure, she was like, okay, if I spend 5 minutes with George, everything is going to go way better. And so she would always make a point of doing that. I really appreciated it, because it was like I felt seen, and it helped me be successful. So
Yeah.
like what Drew's saying about finding the people who are your learning style, being able to so be on the hunt for it, like who are my people?
Right.
And that's one thing, but I want to jump to kind of a bigger scale on this, because I'm so glad you're asking this question. This is a really big deal. We are in a bizarre time in so many ways.
Sure.
And so this question, I think, can serve so many people. A very interesting study that Daniel Goleman got involved in many years ago, back when the internet first was a thing. Like, this is late 90s, where it's like, oh my gosh, I can like
what's email?
type things to people very quickly all over. And so they're looking at national global projects. And you're like, wait a minute, we don't have to fly people all around anymore. Like, oh my goodness. So they took the top performers and they put them together for this global project. They're like, all right, let's do this. And they get to work, open up their email, and they don't respond. And the project just falls flat on its face. It like nothing, it doesn't even take off. It's a miserable crash. And they're like, what's going on? Everybody here knows how to do their job. And 12 years of research later, they find that if we don't have a template in our brain, in our system of who we're talking to, we don't decide things. If we don't have that emotional response to something, we just kind of go, So they found that if they're going to do this kind of global project, the most efficient thing to do was to fly all the key leaders to it tended to be Iceland because that was the shortest distance from everywhere. Because if they were flying everybody to New York, then people from Japan were resenting the New Yorkers. So they found that they would fly everybody together, and if possible, bring their families, and that they should not talk about work at all. They should not talk about the project. They should get to know each other so that for the next year, as they're on this project, oh, I get an email from Matt. Oh, I know who Matt is. That I have an immediate emotional response. I'm going to engage. I care about Matt, blah, 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 all of that. Without that, nothing happens. That's how important emotions are, how important emotional intelligence is. So I don't know what that might look like for you. One person I'm working with, what his company did at the start of this, because some people were like, screw this, I don't want to come back to the office. And they were like, geez, how are we going to navigate this? What they did was they threw a big party. That was it. I loved it. I thought it was so classy. They were like, we don't know what we're doing yet, but we're going to have everybody together in one space, and we're sorting out who's coming to the office and all of this. And they're still in the process. This was like months ago. And he was like, yeah, I think we're all going back into the office. That didn't happen. But they did have an in-person event where everybody got to meet. And it was, he's like, it was awkward and awesome. And so, I don't know. I just wanted to kind of give a overarching context for what you're working on. This is nothing small that you're talking about.
No, and I think it's affected so many people in so many ways, causing a lot. I mean, when we're talking about emotions and reading people and reading others, I've been really, really, really having some a difficult time doing it with upper management. And I know that if I had met, or if I had meet these individuals face to face, it would be a different story. There's so many aspects of respect and emotional, like just caring about each other's, it's lost when you're not seeing each other face to face and kind of
totally. There is neuroscience research around this. If you and I are in the same room, we influence each other more than if we're in like rooms on the other side of a building.
Yeah,
it absolutely is true. And so, and at the same time, these are challenges. And I want to bring in a thought that actually tie together what you were working on, Drew, at the beginning, of taking the lead with things, using your feelings on how to take the lead. And this is some of our coach training, which is, if you can take the risk to assume what's going on with somebody. Let's say you're just on a phone call and you can't see their face.
Right.
To say, I think this is what's going on. Am I right or am I off?
Well,
and because you can take the lead in a conversation. It's uncomfortable. I'm not, in a coaching call with somebody last week, I was like, this is what I think is going on with you. And he says, no, you're totally wrong. This is somebody I'm coaching. And I was like, oh, so inside I'm like, oh, I'm an idiot, whatever. But it actually allowed him to then say no and establish and get clarity about what was going on. It's a big challenge remotely. No lie about that.
Well, and
I mean, and my
job
is, I just want to say one thing. My job has always been a remote job. It's it's been a travel so I'm a clinical trial monitor, which makes sure that the pharmaceutical company and the individuals who are doing the clinical trials are following regulatory.
Okay.
And making, and following the law in terms of a clinical trial. And so, that part, and they will fly us to those sites where they're doing the research, and then we do evaluations of the site. But the piece that we don't have is that coming together piece. No one knows anybody. Nobody really has time to know anybody or go out of their way to try to build the rapport within the employees of a project, of a specific project. And it's just kind of like the standard. Now, how do I like navigate through that? I think you gave me some examples, which is good, but also how do I try to change that culture at work? And I have seen a couple companies from friends and stuff saying that they are having more frequent, they are starting more for some body to body, face to face meetings, but it's very far and few between. And then
Matt, this is such a freaking cool leadership project that you're embarking on, that this matters to you and that you're stepping into it. We've got a wrap. I've got a session coming up at 1.
oh my God, it's already 1 o'clock. I didn't
But
even
this is such good stuff that you're getting into. I really appreciate your questions and what you're doing. And there's a lot for you, but we're gonna have to continue this conversation. So
Yeah.
we are here every noon to 1 p.m. Central Time on Wednesdays.
Gotcha.
Also, the YouTube, we're streaming on YouTube, so you can check it out there. And for anybody who's viewing in, you can get the replay of this if you missed any parts of this you want to jump back on. And also next week, I'm leading a webinar in the evening on emotional intelligence and leadership. And you right now, this is your leadership project, is bringing the heart, bringing the contact into your workplace. I think a very, very beautiful project that you're stepping into here. So we'll see if I'll be employed after I bring it up a little bit more. No, I'm just kidding. No, but no. But to that point, that's actually our approach to coaching. When people are like, "Oh, I hate my job," or "Is this the right spot for me?" or this kind of thing, is, well, did you really go for what you wanted? Right. And if you're doing that and you're doing that in rapport with leadership, and they're saying, you know what, and you get to the spot where they're like, I don't know that this company is the right fit for you. They'll help launch you. They'll be great referral sources for you. What people usually do is they often just jump without really having those conversations. Mm-hmm. So I want to support you in this, and my hunch is that they'll be more receptive to it, but we don't know. We'll find out. Yeah. So check that out. And I look forward to catching up with you next week and hearing about the steps that you can be taking incrementally towards this. Yeah. Thank you. Everybody, welcome. Thank you so much. Drew, really appreciate having you here. Take care. Thank you. Matt, Gabriella, Tyrone, thank you for your shares and thank you for serving everybody who's listening in. Sarah, great to have you as well. See you next week.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.